Sometimes in life we just suffer. Sometimes it's from being totally withdrawn, or so much stress that we are totally anxious, or so tired that we are totally burnt out. But our current position is not our final destination. No, indeed. There's hope. So whether it's your personal life, your career, your relationship, your business, or your job, we say there's reason to believe again. And we present from Andy's personal development, the breakout room. It's the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Stay tuned for more. Our next guest to be welcomed in the breakout room is Brad Axelrad. He has helped leaders like you step into their power and create a thriving coaching business in the process. He says, I've produced over 150 live events, spoken from nearly 300 stages. He's also the host of Face Your Dragon podcast. This is Brad. Brad now shares his message about utilizing fear to fuel your message and income. He gives presentations to groups who want to take their life to the next level and make more money living their purpose. And he's happy about it. So, let's welcome the super inspired slayer of dragons, the man, Brad Axelrad. Hi, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, and folks, we are live in the breakout room. Our guest today, a gentleman by the name of Brad Axelrad. He is the individual that has worked for over a decade now with coaches and consultants to transform their struggles into strength by helping them face their fears and dance with their dragons. And we're going to ask him what he means by that. He's also done countless interviews on the Face Your Dragon podcast and is a proud founding member of the Association of Transformational Leaders community. So that's enough for me about him. Now let's hear what Brad has to say. Welcome, Brad, to the show. How are you? And tell us a bit about yourself.
It's super happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I just want to warn you now, I just started getting a little bit of a cold this morning, so I might have a little bit of a cough and need some water, but I'm just really happy to share any message I can. And that's been my commitment along this path, is really being in service and making sure I'm supporting in any way that any way I can from all of my life experience. But that really started from massive pain. You know, we all have parents that didn't know what the heck they were doing. And they're amazing. We love our parents, and we love our church, and we love our schools, and we love all our cultures. And yet there's a lot of things inside of all of those that can create pain in us. And that's what sort of got me started. Do you want me to keep going, or is that a good intro?
You just go with your heart.
I love it. So when I say massive pain, you know, there comes a point in most people's lives, there's sort of a fork in the road that we'll take. And some of us decide to actually try to relieve ourselves from the pain and make serious changes in our lives. Others will take another path, and that's distraction, addiction, self-medication, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is, pornography, things, social media, any way to distract themselves from the pain they're in. So I took the other path of healing, and that really started with Tony Robbins in the year 2000. But fast forward to 2003, And there's a place called the Hoffman Institute, the Hoffman process. And it's this brilliant, deep work into all the aspects of ourselves, our spiritual self, our physical, emotional, and intellectual self, and understanding that we take on all these patterns from our parents and from the church, and we get programmed. And Hoffman really deprograms you, and you live your life from this very spiritual essence. And that was for my first start into the transformational work. And I became the Orange County, California graduate facilitator of the Hoffman process. And that was a monthly thing that morphed into me producing hundreds of live events with some of the biggest thought and business leaders on the planet.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing, Brad. I want to take a step down history with regards to some of the pain that you spoke about, and also some of the relief, and you finally meeting that fork in the road and making the decision that healing would be the better choice. How far back can you go, Brad, to remember the times of your life when you were trying to come to terms with the reality of what your parents were doing, the culture, the religion, the village, the community, whatever it is that was the ecosystems around you? How did it affect your life in the early stages of Brad's legacy?
It's a really potent question, and I'm feeling even some of the grief that's still there in me for both myself and others, just knowing that we're all have this human experience and this human condition, right? You know, what comes to mind is about 8 years old and hearing parents fighting and knowing that there's a better way, and coming into the bedroom and saying, hey, stop it. You know, it's like being the peacekeeper at a young age. You know, it's like children, including myself, like we have this awareness of something that's this innate awareness that something could be different or better just out of the womb. And that's what comes to mind would be me walking in the parents' room and experiencing that. But I really think that, and there was of course many occasions like that with brothers, and you know, there's just a lot of people in the household, like things break down, people get frustrated, scared, angry, hurt. It's just normal. But what really started happening is I fast forward to about 28 years old. And what I share about when I'm on podcasts, which I'm on these a lot, is that I was in this place of self-indulgence, and self-indulgence looked like motorcycles. It looked like alcohol, food, drugs, travel, trying to create external wealth and success with any way I could. It was this external thing. Of course, I'd always had some awareness of spirituality and wasn't very religious. My parents kind of denounced their religiosity or religion early. And there's nothing wrong with it, although I feel that dogma can really keep people trapped in a box. There's these infinite possibilities. So anyway, that said, I at 28, 29, there was a feather tickling me. And maybe anybody listening or watching this can relate to this little bit of feather tickling or a God whispering, like whispering, God whispering. So we ignore this feather, and I was ignoring it, but I knew something had to change. I'm ignoring the feather, and then a brick hit me upside the head. I'm like, wow, I shook that off. But my dad passing in 2005 was the Mack truck that came and took me out. And if we ignore these signs that get louder and louder over time, eventually God is gonna shake us and wake us up to something else. And what I called it was the grave of self-indulgence. And that self-indulgence doesn't really serve us. We can only, it's a bottomless, it's a God-sized hole is what they say in addiction communities. And right. And it's like, you can't fill it with anything other than being in service and being on your purpose, but truly, sincerely, humbly being in service.
I remember very well a speech by the late Mahatma Gandhi, where he paused. He used the technique of pregnant pause when he said that it is only in giving of service that one can discover their true self. And that resonates with what you just said. So tell us, Brad, what did you do? Did you become involved in the corporate world and try to fit in as well as what you were doing as a younger man? Or did you
Right.
somehow realize that there was something more deeper, more special for you to accomplish?
Andy, you're really good at this, man. I'm super excited to be in this conversation with you. It's
Thank
really
you. I
good.
appreciate that. I appreciate
Everyone's
you.
enjoying your podcast, I'm sure, and hopefully this one as well. It's really good.
Yeah.
So the service part really came when I was at the Hoffman process, and I raised my hand to keep that work, and I became a teacher of it in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And we met monthly, and we talked about the Hoffman principles, about mom and dad, and the patterns that we mimicked and modeled.
Yeah.
And whatever the patterns were, anger, frustration, addiction, all the things that we do that we watched mom and dad do, and we're just repeating them.
Yeah.
Or the opposite of that, we're rebelling against them and we do the opposite. You were afraid, mom and dad, I'll show you, which I was a motocross racer, I'll show you how tough and courageous I am. Let me go do all these things to rebel against your fear.
Yeah.
And was the beginning of my Face Your Dragon brand. But that was the first sort of the genesis of me getting into being in service. And but what I really wanted to do was speak to principles outside of just the Hoffman work. After about 2 years of doing that, that morphed into me creating conversations around quantum physics and neuroscience and the law of attraction, and ultimately now into plant medicine and other things along the way that I've picked up. So really the service for me was, how can I be a connector of humans? If somebody needs something, how can I get out of my own thought process and say, wow, Andy's sitting across from me. He needs to meet this person to move his life or business forward. Let me connect him with this person. So mindfully and proactively and consciously connecting people all day, every day. Yeah. And I became this incredible, massive connector. And so many people were thriving around me because I was focused on them winning in their life. And if you can help enough people win in their lives, you're going to win in yours. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah. Great. You keep bringing me back to so many functionary and virtual quotes. Thanks for sharing, Brad. I appreciate the passion you just shared with us. A former Prime Minister of Britain, Benjamin Disraeli, he said, and I quote, "It is not so much good to give people out of your own treasures, but it is so much better to help them discover treasures of their own." And I think that is in sync with what you have discovered. And that's an amazing thing. How do we get leaders, people who have these gifts, to understand that they ought to become servants to the gifts? Yeah. And the greatest level of fulfillment is when they use these gifts to create an ROI for the investment that the universe has made in them. What kind of mindset and heart set would it take for them to get that understanding, Brad?
Unfortunately, I'm going to say it this way. Unfortunately, it takes most people to have something bad happen to them to wake them up. Most people don't just wake up. Yeah. And it's really sad that I've waited and wanted for so many in my life and in my experience to finally say, you know what, it's time for change. I'm ready for change. I want to serve more. I want to be a servant leader. It's time to lead from a place of humility and gratitude and appreciation. And one thing I like to do when I'm in a leadership role, and I was just in a high level leadership role for the Independent National Convention. So the independent political party in the United States, I was charged with and brought in to help as the chief operations officer to help them produce the convention. Right. And what I realized is that in these leadership roles, we want to turn the pyramid upside down. So it's not about you on top and everybody underneath you. Flip it upside down. Yeah. Everybody else is working like I work for them. It's like, what do you need from me so I can make your job easy? How can I be in service to you so that we can all win together? It's about the we, it's not about me. And you can see in so many political environments that it's really a top-down leadership dynamic. And that's really what I think you're alluding to, is that there's something a little bit more loving and considerate and thoughtful. But unfortunately, there's many egomaniacs out there, even on the narcissistic spectrum and megalomaniac spectrum, that really want to be dominators and dictators. And, you know, I don't know exactly where you're from, Andy, but, you know, even in the US is starting to kind of tip some of those directions. Like, it's interesting to observe what's happening. And I live in Mexico currently, and you can see that there's a lot of that energy here. It's just sort of greed and get whatever I want. And there's a lot of corruption, you know, both at the political level and even in the local level. It's sad to watch.
Yeah, I hear you, Brad. You know, I've been listening to Kevin Hart speak on Jay Shetty's podcast.
Nice.
And he's saying, look, man, people talk about imposter syndrome. People talk about depression. He said the greatest disease that man has is his desire for two things: power, fame.
Yep.
It's like a high price, unattainable drug. You just keep on reaching for it all the time,
right,
but you just can't get it. Yep. Because it seems as though the more you probably get, if you happen to, you always want a little bit more. And that is universal, not just in North America or in the Caribbean where I am. I'm from a small twin island republic state of Trinidad and Tobago, just 1.4.
Oh, you're Trini. Okay.
7 miles off the coast of South America, bordering Venezuela.
Nice.
And we see what is happening in the world. We are a place where we can have a mirror, a microscopic mirror of what's happening in the world. And it's universal, Brad. And so the thing that I want to ask you is, you use the term dragon. And it's mythical, and it goes way back into the history. You see it on cartoons and even some of the animations of Disney and all these people. Why did you choose the term dragon instead of monsters or something more maybe palatable or understandable? Because when the term dragon is used, you got to go back. It's like this primitive concept, but with a modern feeling. Wow. Right. Dragon. Where's the concept come from, Brad?
Yeah, well, being a branding specialist and you know, a messaging positioning consultant, that's a lot of what I do is helping others craft that unique position in the marketplace. That's the short answer. But the long answer is, when I was crafting, I was bradaxelrad.com for a long time.
Okay.
Now I'm faceyourdragon.com for, I don't know, probably eight or 9 years at this point. But the point is, I grew up around mom reading fantasy books, and she read these Anne McCaffrey books that were all about dragons. And she had 100 dragons all through our place growing up. They had no meaning to me. I had no connection to them. And I just knew they were always in my experience, like deeply in my childhood. And I finally saw How to Train Your Dragon and Avatar. And, you know, I'd started studying Joseph Campbell a lot and The Hero's Journey. You've probably heard of that. And that was the first place I heard somebody say, you have to face your dragon. And that was Joseph Campbell. And I thought, oh, that's really good. Yeah. You know, fast forward years later, I'm deep in the mountains of Colorado, and I was participating in a lot of plant medicine ceremonies, doing a lot of deep work in the astral planes and tuning in, trying to find my message. I was for months trying to find what is unique about me. I'm a motocross racer. I face fear. I've produced events. I've been all over national media. I've done all these things. I'm like this guy, but what's my brand? And so Face Your Dragon came through that, and I'd come up with, you know, what those dragons are inside of that body of work. And we can talk about those, but it's really the Face Your Dragon. What it means is, through my lens, having the courage to look within and to feel the discomfort and know that those uncomfortable shadowy aspects of us and unconscious painful parts of us are our gift. There's power in our pain. There's purpose in our pain. We're able to use these aspects if we have the courage enough to look our dragon straight in the face and learn to love our fear, learn to love our dragon. If you remember in Avatar, they had to bond with their dragon. They had to connect with this aspect that could kill them in an instant. This big, powerful freaking thing, right? Yeah. But once they became friends with it, and I'm getting chills right now. Like
wow.
They get to break free, and now they're soaring all over the world, connected to this beast that's a part of them, and it loves them. So that's the explanation of the dragon. It's how to tune in, and how to face that aspect, shadow aspect of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's really our greatest power.
I love that philosophy. And I want to thank you again for sharing with such passion. So let's continue in that vein a little bit. You are the face of the podcast, Face Your Dragon. What is the basic message that you want to get to the audience? What kind of audience you're focusing on? And I'm going to stretch it a little bit to say the kind of persons that you want on there. Are you looking for people who are fearless, or you're looking for those who have gone through their fears, process it, overcome it, and now have a story to share that will help others in their same struggles?
It's a really, really important thing. And it was designed to interview the whole range of people who have come through the fire, stood in the fire, they've come through the fire, and they've created whatever they something big in their life, typically, for example, or they've just come through something big. Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of the prolific author of the 4 Agreements. You may have read that book and know it. So he was guest number 1.
Okay.
The reason I put my friend Miguel on as guest number 1 is that Miguel's had a heart transplant. Scratch that. Miguel has now had 2 heart transplants.
Wow.
When I did the podcast, he had a heart transplant. I don't know anyone that's had a heart transplant, let alone still out doing their public work in the world, sharing like Miguel does, writing books, sharing. He had a heart transplant. And to me, that's like the whole first podcast is about the heart. It's about your passion. It's about his physical heart. It's about understanding that when you're not living your passion, your heart suffers. It's about heartache. It's about heart math. You may have heard what heart math is. I pulled my friend, the former CEO of Heart Math, on to share his perspective about the heart.
Right.
It's really about understanding that we come through these things, and that was the other element. It's been said that Miguel wore his heart out by sharing so much love through his heart that he wore it out.
Wow.
Of course, that's not true, probably, but it's because he is the most loving human I've ever met. He is radiating love, like he's beaming love. So that was the first podcast theme, was all about the heart. And then the second episode, Gay Hendricks of The Big Leap and Conscious Loving, another very well-known author, PhD, brilliant human. One of my favorite authors. We talk a lot about the upper limit in his book, The Big Leap. And it's all about self-sabotage and how we'll only allow so much of something in our life before we screw it up. So typically we hit our thermostat and we'll screw it up in one of 3 ways. Our relationships, we'll start an argument because we can't feel this good for so long. We have to screw it up. Or we'll manifest a financial challenge because we can't be this free financially for a long time, so we create a problem. Or in our physical health, we create an accident. We keep hitting that upper limit. He talks about upper limiting. So anyway, so the podcast has all these brilliant friends of mine, and season 2, when that comes out, we'll have more people that have just overcome, like the guy that was hiking in Colorado that had to cut his arm off to break free from a rock, just people like that.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for sharing. You said something there that kind of resonates with me, and it has to do with someone not being able to live a life of fulfillment because they have not discovered their purpose, and it puts a strain or stress on the heart.
Yeah.
Brad, how can we, and I say we because I do a lot of this in my coaching and my speaking, how can we lead people to a place where they can understand how not just to discover their purpose in life. I mean, what am I here for? What is my big why? But also to embrace it and then to seek that fulfillment after.
That's nice. Yeah, courage first.
Okay.
The hashtags I use. Well, I'll start with the hashtags. It's face your dragon, so face your fear, take the leap, and then break free. Those are the 3 hashtags I use a lot.
Okay.
But the process is to find your fear, to find your fear, to face your fear, and then use your fear. So we want to have the courage first to look within, and there's many ways to get access in. The Hoffman process, Landmark Education, I think of. There's many other seminars that are worldwide, like Landmark is worldwide. It's probably one of the biggest training companies on the world. Tony Robbins, and anything, reading books like you probably share with your audience a lot. But really, plant medicine's another one. Most of the ways that you're going to face it are going to be through experiential learning, though. It's not going to be reading a book.
Okay.
Bungee jumping, maybe, parachuting, maybe. If you have fear of heights, sure, which I kind of do. I still have yet to parachute or bungee. It makes me really scared. I haven't done it. But I did race semi-professional motocross. I have tens of thousands of hours on motorcycles and in cars driving really fast, and snow skiing and doing extreme sports. So exposure therapy is the access. What you're most afraid of, you want to expose yourself to it, and that gives you access. Okay, so that now you're getting access into what's preventing you from jumping.
Yeah.
Then there comes a point where even on my motorcycle, you just have to hold the gas on and go for it. There's a point where the first time you jump something or start a business or do anything, which I started my first business at 8, but my first real business at 19 years old. I've mostly been an entrepreneur since 19. I'm now 51 in a couple weeks.
Right. Okay.
So I've been scared to death so many times, and you have to keep leaning in, but you have to there's 2 things happening in that finding and discovering your purpose and following that intuitive sort of thread. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the masculine energy of pushing and making it happen, and it's the feminine energy of drawing it into you and trusting and surrendering, right? So we need to do a lot of both as entrepreneurs. There comes a point where the pushing isn't going to work anymore, and we need to back up and surrender. Hacking, but it was really it was a former business partner. He creates these book anthologies where they're all short stories of people overcoming health challenges or manifesting miracles or whatever it is, and so I've been tempted and threatened a couple times, threatened others that I would write a book, but I've yet to do that.
Okay. But it could be a possibility sometime in the future. Yeah.
I really appreciate you poking around here, because that at some point, I think so.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing, Brad. I want to switch to the young people a little bit. We have a universal, quote unquote, term that is going around that is called the imposter syndrome.
Yep.
And everybody feels that they need to be somebody else but themselves. And a whole lot of young people are falling into that kind of suction where they feel that, okay, I have to go with the flow. I have to follow this one. I have to be on this one's social media page and stuff. And they are all going away from everything except finding values for life.
Right.
What would you say to these young people, Brad? Because they're going in the wrong direction and they're heading in a place where at the end of the road, there's no return, there's no rewards. How do we get them to do an about turn and maybe change direction and understand that life is so much more valuable than that?
Well, as you may be alluding to, I've come up with 5 core dragons that get in the way of people in their lives, relationships, but more importantly in business or taking the leap into something that sets them free. So I'll just share what they are really quickly, and then we can talk about imposter syndrome. But imposter, scarcity, value, unheard, and critics. So they all kind of work together to keep us stuck and trapped in our stuff. we're just, oh my gosh, I'm an imposter. Who am I to do this? But basically, anytime we start something new, excuse me, we are going to feel like an imposter. That's pretty normal. I heard Jordan Peterson share that. I had a friend create a little reel for me that talks about Jordan basically saying that anytime we start something new, we're going to be an imposter and have that experience of being an imposter. But what's happening, I think, in society at large is that not knowing ourselves, like you're saying, and we don't know ourselves when we're younger, we're finding ourselves. I mean, we're finding ourselves for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
However, we really don't know ourselves when we're younger. So we get influenced by external things like you're alluding to. And unfortunately, and fortunately, there's this beautiful, horrible thing called social media that creates this external validation for us. But more importantly, what it's creating are dopamine addicts. It's literally creating so many of us to be addicted to dopamine. And these poor kids are getting imprinted massively with the video games, with the social media, with the with AI, with the ease of filters, and it used to be Photoshop, but now you can just filter a photo and post it. And so there's these false projections of beauty and of handsomeness and of success, and there's this facade out there that we're buying into. And so my real feedback for the young listeners is to really check in to see, are you really loving yourself in the moment, or are you seeking something outside of yourself so that you feel okay? And look, I understand it's tough when we're young. We feel uncomfortable. And yeah, I would just check in and see, is there a way to find a sense of centeredness and ease and comfort without the need for all the likes and the comments and the shares and all the other hoo-ha.
Yeah. Wow, thanks for sharing. I'm looking at comments here, and Loretta is saying, so true, brother. They did their best with what they have. I know she's probably alluding to some earlier comment, but I just wanted to share that with you in the moment. In terms of the ills that we have in the world today, and I mean, there are so many, just to mention a few, there seems to be a huge gap between those who have, quote unquote, and those who don't have. Poverty is a worldwide issue. Irregardless to what country you go in, you're going to see some level of poverty somewhere. Yeah? There's inequality with regards to who gets paid more and who gets paid less. There's so many exploitation taking place with workers in terms of the conditions that they're supposed to work under and the benefits they're supposed to get. And then we have the natural phenomenons of people coming out of COVID-19, people having to deal with depression, people having to deal with cancer, heart attack, lifestyle diseases. If there's one thing you could address about the ills that we experience in this world, if you had the power to, Brad, what would it be?
Wow. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Noticing sadness, first of all, just naming and owning it in ourselves and being with it instead of resisting it. Right. What we resist persists. Like it's like the first step is to feel our experience, to witness it in ourselves, to have the ability to witness it in others. Because oftentimes if we're not connected to ourselves enough to allow ourselves to feel the discomfort, we don't have the capacity for empathy, for sympathy, for connection, for compassion. So I know that's not necessarily going to change things on a global level, but in the street, if we can make somebody's day better by really hearing them and feeling them and knowing that we're really there with them. So that level of presence, because we really can only change ourselves and how we're working with others. Like, I'm sure we can try to create these big global movements and things, but 99.9% of the humans on the planet are working one-to-one here. And we're that this is our home, our neighbors, our community, our city, our nation, our state, whatever it is, right? Like, that we need to focus here first. So that would be my first thought, is how do we really get so grounded and rooted and connected to the person in front of us and ourselves both. But on the global scale, it's painful and sad to see that there is so much homelessness and poverty. And it's like, you think with all the gazillions of dollars we have, if we were to allocate it in the right ways, we'd be able to create some level of impact. And it's unfortunate, back to our earlier point around the greed and the ego, and like that power, and it's just sad. I don't really know what to do there. The corruption, the greed, the power, and the homelessness crisis has gotten really bad in the US. It's gotten bad everywhere with COVID. I mean, it must be even worse in other places, but being from the US, I have firsthand experience seeing how much worse it's gotten. And it's crazy to me that we can't do something about it.
Yeah. It's amazing sometimes how we see the world through a certain lens. And I would ask that question to some people, and they would say, Andy, you know what? I think we should just leave things the way they are.
Right?
Because there has to be a balance somewhere, right? It's like the Apostle Paul saying, well, the Lord himself, Jesus, said that the poor will always be with us. And it's amazing that you kind of have to accept that as a reality. It's tough. And I want to go back to something you said about the dopamine rush. And I'm thinking, in basic psychology, dopamine is not bad. But if it comes in the absence of oxytocin, which is much more necessary, then you're going to have a problem.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you want to always get that outer stimulation to feel that inner good feeling. But it's only based on something that's external. What happens to you on the inside? Especially when that which is external is dissipated, it's gone. How do we get them to bounce back?
Yeah, it's short-lived. It's a short burst. Unfortunately, serotonin may be a little longer lasting, but
that's right.
Yes, and oxytocin too, but oxytocin is obviously very important as well. Like, that's the love drug, the love hormone, the connection, right? It's beautiful. It's like we're all seeking that at some level, and we all need all of these.
Right. Yeah.
What I found is, though, that physiologically we can manage our hormones. This may not really even answer your question, but what's coming to mind is, like, I watch people go through these hormonal spikes all day long, whether it's a social media rush or lots of caffeine in the morning, and then they crash, and then they're stressed out or anxious, so they're alcohol at night, and then they're tired in the morning, and then they're just on this sugar and caffeine and alcohol spiking themselves all day long. All the while they're destroying their adrenals, and with cortisol and stress and all these other things, like. So where I focus is gut health, focus on getting your adrenals back in line with adrenal supplementation. I like to avoid coffee at all. I'll have maybe 4 cups of coffee a year.
Okay.
I don't drink alcohol. I not that I haven't, I've done a lot of all these things, but I find that a sustainable energy source, so nutrient supplements, is much better than stimulants. That's what I like to say.
Yeah. Sounds good. Appreciate that. We just have about 2 minutes to go on the program, and I would like to give Brad the opportunity now to share his social hashtag handles. There's so much valuable content that we have discussed, but you can reach out to Brad in his platform, on his places where he, well, I don't want to say sell, but where he puts his service out there and it becomes a valuable product. So Brad, go ahead, tell them where to find you.
Appreciate that. It's good to share the message far and wide. This will help. So the first place, if you want to listen to the podcast, you can just go to faceyourdragon.com, and you can read a little more about me, about how I could maybe help you, or just in any way, whether it's me directly or just from resources and other things. And on the website, of course, you'll see all the podcasts listed there. And then there's a quiz on the website that's really cool too. It's called the Courage Quiz, and you'll discover the #1 hidden fear stopping you from earning what you're worth. So it's really about our hidden fears that we're not aware of. So these processes can help you get clear on what those are hiding in the shadows. We just need to turn the light on. And then, of course, anywhere, Facebook, it's just Brad Axelrad. It's AXELRAD. Instagram and LinkedIn, Twitter. We're starting to get a little bit more heavy on TikTok over the coming weeks, but Facebook and Instagram are probably the two best.
Okay, great. So we have had Brad Axelrad, the man with the Face Your Dragon podcast and the Face Your Dragon philosophy and belief of life that we can overcome any fears that we face in this life. We just have to find our true self, embrace our true values, and let the reality of what life has offered for us as a purpose become our reality. Align ourselves with that, as he said, and things can turn around and become so much better. So thank you so much for sharing, Brad. Until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, and we thank you for your comments. I know there are a lot more folks in the background keeping quiet, but that's all right. I know you're getting the value and you're appreciating the content. I'm going to see all your comments later on. Remember our 3 watchwords. We focus on health, happiness, and prosperity. Until next time, this is Andy and our guest Brad saying, so long, Godspeed, God bless, Shalom, Namaste. Bye for now, guys. Until next time.